Hi and welcome back to the second episode of our vlog with an update on all the efforts for getting our M151A1 parade vehicle of the US Army Berlin Brigade back on the road. You might notice that instead of being in the workshop, like promised, I'm standing here in the permanent exhibition of the Allied Museum next to our second M151A1. Like the rest of the country, Berlin is still in the tight grip of the fourth corona wave, unfortunately, and we are trying to reduce contacts as much as possible. And it is with measures such like commenting on the current progress from the museum rather than from the workshop. But we'll keep you informed anyway, as you are going to see in this video. In the previous episode, we introduced the car, the historical value it has, and the whole project to you. In the weeks since then, the project has gained quite a bit of speed. So the first thing that needed to be done was to get our M151A1 to the workshop. So we organized a trailer, put the car on it, and drove it to the garage. Unfortunately, we chose one of the first days of snow of the season. The streets were cleared though, so that we did not feel compelled to postpone because of the snow or any ice on the roads. However, after arrival, we had to remove any potential dangerous salty spray from the vehicle by giving it a good sponge bath before bringing it into the workshop. A particularly fun exercise, as you can imagine, in winter conditions. Being pushed in the workshop, it was time for first in-depth inspection and disassembling the car. Well, let's call it a reality check. Because only when it's disassembled, this Ford Mutt will reveal the true amount of work and parts that are necessary for it to be put back on the road. So in this episode, I will show you what we found during inspection. And let's start with the seats. The seats were taken out of the car and it was put on the platform. There were some unforeseen issues to be added to the to-do list, of course, but nothing of enormous proportions. One of the points that were added to the list were the shock absorbers. Even though they might still be good for a year or two to run, we decided to replace them. This is also because of a general design flaw of the M151A1. Both the M151 and the M151A1 models have a swing axle at the back. This simplistic form of independent suspension was supposed to provide better mobility on uneven surfaces. However, in corners, when taken with too much speed, the swing axle can create a dramatic oversteer with the result of rolling the vehicle. There were quite a lot of accidents because soldiers overestimated the cornering speed. That was especially the case when there was no cargo loaded onto the back of the Mutt. In order to minimize the risk of overturning the car when driving, we decided it would be better to replace those old shocks with new ones. Two additional ways of minimizing the risk of rolling the M151A1 are, of course, reducing speed before cornering and putting weight on the back on that swing axle. Often soldiers would put boxes or bags filled with sand on the back to address the issue. After all, the Mutt is designed to carry up to around 250 kilograms of cargo. The successor model, the A2, then came with a completely revised suspension. Also, many vehicles were fitted with a roll cage called rollover protection system, which was supposed to protect the driver and the passengers. However, even with those changes made to the A2 model, the issue was never completely eradicated. One can only speculate if back in 1983 on a training area in West Germany, this A2 model of the US Army Berlin Brigade fell also victim to this nasty little habit. As you might remember in the last video, I went on bragging about the meticulous rust-free state of our M151A1. Well, after a more thorough look, I feel that I have to soften that statement a bit. We discovered some rust patches here and there, mostly on the underbelly of the unibody. But the good news is that none of those patches is deemed to be dangerous. They will be treated, of course, but nowhere did the rust eat its way into the structure. So the biggest rust damage is on the underside of the battery compartment, simply because the batteries were not removed after retiring the car, and after time, leaking acid started to do its thing. So nevertheless, we will get rid of every rust spot found in order to prevent it from becoming a real problem. There's one integral part, however, where rust has struck hard. The fuel tank will probably have to be replaced. It seems like there is a lot of rust inside the tank, and not only the batteries were left in the car back in 1994, but the fuel, part of the fuel also remained. Maybe that is because someone decided it would be wise to weld the fuel release on the bottom of the tank shut. We will take it to an expert, the whole tank, to give a verdict on whether it's salvageable or if the whole tank needs to be replaced. Well, on a good note though, one has to say that the electronic fuel pump, which in the A1 model is situated inside of the MUT's petrol tank, has already been restored and is working. The guys at the workshop did a magnificent job on getting the old fuel pump back to work. By the way, the fuel tank of the M151 series vehicles sits right underneath the driver's seat, so a well-maintained fuel tank should be in every MUT driver's interest. Talking about safety issues, the brakes are in very good condition. Brake pads and drums are in excellent state. Only cylinder and hoses need to be replaced. Here you can see that the bearing sleeves are also in need of replacing. Some of the chrome wheels have set on some rust. We will try and remove those stains with polish. The most exciting moment so far during the first sighting was the first test of the car's engine. The engine has not been running since we took the car over from the US Army Berlin Brigade in 1994. In order to give it a try, we had to install the carburetor first, since it was removed from the engine before the handover for whatever reason, we don't know. The interesting thing is that the removed carburetor lay in a box in the back of the MUT together with other components. And it turned to be out a Holly carburetor, which is a strange thing because this make was only fitted to the M151s until 1964, and ours is a 1969 model. Anyway, for trying to start the engine, we helped ourselves to a spare Zenith carburetor we had in store. After fitting it, it was time to fill the engine up with oil and get the fuel pump going. And well, here without further ado is the result of the first test. Remember, this is the first time the engine was turned on since 1994, and it started nearly right away. All it took was a restored fuel pump and the cleaning of the spark plugs. It's fantastic. It's a huge relief for us. And in the meantime, we have made a few more test runs with it, trying out the gears, getting it up to speed to around 50 miles per hour, so around 80 kilometers per hour, and the oil pressure was also fine all the time. But after this highlight, it was time to remove the engine and drivetrain for further repairs and for restoration, of course. Engine and transmission were removed as one power pack and put on a stack of pallets. After removing the power pack, we found that the radiator had some defects. The mount of the silent block around the water inlet was a bit too rusty and needs to be replaced. And you can see that the radiator has already been repaired once. At the lower end, there's quite a dent, but thankfully there's no leakage. We're going to use the opportunity also to clean the now empty engine bay. Drive and prop shafts were also removed and set aside for cleaning and for further inspection. The differentials were detached too, and they're looking pretty good, at least from the outside. The transmission is losing oil, but that comes mostly from worn and dried out rubber seals. So obviously those have to be replaced. While the M151A1 was still on the platform, we also got the exhaust out. Even though the rust is already quite visible all along the exhaust pipe, it is still usable. It just needs to be cleaned. One issue, however, is still a bit mysterious to us, and that is the paint job on both our M151A1s. But that is a topic for completely another video because it just takes so long. So this is it for now, and by the next video we will hopefully have ordered the bulk of the spare parts we need and made some more progress. So once more, I recommend, if you haven't done so already, to subscribe to our Facebook page, to our Instagram and to our YouTube channels, and let us know in the comment sections how you think it is going so far. Also, if you have questions, we will be happy to answer them. So, see you next time.